Okay, so um chapter 2. So chapter 2 starts with Star. This is after Khalil and Star get pulled over. Um when they got pulled over because Khalil was driving Star home after the party and the shooting, and um they talked about Tupac. Like, Star was giving Khalil, like, she was giving him a hard time for still listening to Tupac because it's old music and stuff like that. And Khalil talked to her about what Tupac says thug life means and all that. He ended up pulling the car over to the side of the road, and he ended up kissing Star, and she kissed him back, but then she stopped him and told him that she had a boyfriend and all that. And as Khalil took off driving again, he got pulled over. So this is where we're at. Star remembers the talk her parents gave her when she was 12 about how to behave in front of police officers. Lisa, her mother, thought she was too young, but Maverick, her father, said she was old enough to be arrested or shot. He emphasized doing exactly what she was told and speaking only when spoken to. Star notes that if her loud-mouthed father said to be quiet, she knew she'd better listen. The officer approaches the car, and Star hopes that Khalil has had the talk too. Khalil is immediately skeptical of what this fool wants, remembering her father's warning that if there were any contraband in the car, everyone present would get in trouble. Star anxiously asks Khalil, is there anything in the car? He says there isn't. The officer shines his light in their faces and asks Khalil for his license and registration. Khalil asks why they were pulled over, breaking the rules of how to engage with law enforcement. The increasingly terrified Star implores Khalil to just do what he says. Star remembers Maverick's instructions to get a good look at the cop's face and notes that the officer is a white man with the badge number 115. 115 says he has pulled them over for a broken taillight and asks where they are coming from, to which Khalil responds with Nunya. 115 demands that Khalil get out of the car, pins his arms behind his back, and proceeds to search him. Finding nothing, 115 angrily tells Khalil to stay where he is and not to move while he walks back to his patrol car. Star mentally recites the lessons her parents taught her, including that it's not smart to make sudden movements when an officer has his back to you. Khalil does this anyways, opening the door to ask Star if she is okay. I'm gonna note here that I didn't put this on here, but Khalil actually reached in the car to grab his hairbrush, and this is when 115 shoots Khalil 3 times in the back. Star watches in horror as blood spurts from her friend and Khalil drops to the ground. She rushes out of the car to his side as he dies. 115 tells her not to move and points his gun at her. So this is where the story took a turn, and Khalil was shot and killed, and that's kind of where this whole story develops. Chapter 3 is, while waiting for her parents to pick her up, Star notes that officials leave Khalil's body in the street like an exhibit. The police rummage through his car, and she doesn't want them to touch his things, including his hairbrush. When an officer finally puts a sheet over Khalil, Star worries he can't breathe under it, and notes that suddenly she can't breathe either. A distraught Maverick and Lisa arrive and take Star home. They tenderly put her to bed. The following morning, Star wakes up and thinks about Natasha. At age 10, Natasha excitedly called for Star to join her in running through a busted fire hydrant. While happily playing in the water, shots suddenly rang out. Star dove into a bush of roses for cover, but Natasha was struck and killed. So this is their friend that her and Khalil were talking about. They all three were really good friends when they were little, and Natasha was shot and killed 6 years before this, and that was also when Star's parents moved her and her brothers out of Garden Heights. Well, they still live in Garden Heights, but they took them out of school in Garden Heights and sent them to Williamson. Star walks to the kitchen. Nothing at the Carter home has pictures of Malcolm X alongside Black Jesus on its wall. She calls her family Chrislams, a mixture of Christian and Muslim. With Maverick following the Black Panthers 10-point program more closely than the Bible, at breakfast, Seven discusses how King, a major neighborhood drug dealer, had moved in with his girlfriend, Seven's mother, Aisha. Maverick offers to let Seven live with the Carters, but Seven wants to be there to protect his mother and sisters, Kenya and Lyric, from King's beatings. Seven asks why they shot Khalil, and Star responds that she and Khalil didn't do anything wrong, and that Khalil did not have a gun. Maverick notes that this will cause people in the neighborhood to lose their minds. Star worries about what will happen when the world finds out she was in the car. She has seen all hell break loose in similar situations before and always thought she would have the loudest voice if someone she knew were killed. Now, however, she's afraid to speak up. Star wishes she could stay home to watch her favorite show, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which has many similarities to her own life. She also wants to talk to Chris, whom she has been ignoring. She wonders if she should call her other Williamson friends, Maya and Haley. Then she recalls inviting them to a sleepover years earlier that Haley's parents wouldn't let her attend because they didn't want their daughter spending the night in the ghetto. That was the first moment Star realized she had to keep her Garden Heights and Williamson worlds separate. Star thinks about the texts she has not responded to from her boyfriend Chris, who is white. She notes that while Seven and Lisa know about Chris and have accepted their relationship, Star is frightened to tell Maverick that she is dating a white person. Kenya enters the store and asks if her brother, not our, a verbal tonic that annoys Star, stayed with the Carters the previous night. Kenya then expresses sympathy for Khalil's death and shares a bag of Cheetos with Star as a means of comforting her. She says that Devontae, a boy from Big's party, finally asked for her number. Star wishes she'd stay with Kenya that night. Kenya and Star walk to get food for Mr. Rubens, a kindly shopkeeper who remembers all his regulars' names and orders. On the way back, they are stopped by Kenya's father, King. Maverick, who used to be in the same gang as King, bristles when King addresses him by his former gang affiliation. King asks to keep a package of drugs at Maverick's store, and Maverick angrily refuses. He tells King not to forget that when he went to jail on his behalf, and further warns him not to lay a hand on Seven. King takes Kenya and speeds away. So, throughout that chapter, we just see a lot of Star struggling with dealing with what happened to Khalil, and worrying about if King's going to target her or anything like that, or worrying about people finding out. So that was a lot of that chapter. Chapter 4. Star overhears her parents arguing with Carlos, who is Lisa's brother and a detective, about Khalil's shooting. Carlos reveals that he is on the same force as 115 and defends his league's actions, saying Maverick always makes things about race, and questioning whether or why Star was in the car with a drug dealer. Maverick argues that the officer only assumed Khalil was a thug because he was black. Carlos says Lisa needs to move away from the poisonous Garden Heights, something Maverick refuses to ever do. Star enters the room and Carlos asks if she would be willing to talk to some detectives. Star is scared of facing the police again. With Carlos's assurance that it will help Khalil, she agrees. Star thinks the real reason her father and uncle fight is because of Maverick's insecurity and guilt about not being there for part of his children's lives. Carlos took care of Star and Lisa while Maverick was in prison for 3 years and is a surrogate father to Star. Maverick tells his daughter that he witnessed people being shot and killed in front of him as well, and that he named her Star because she was his light in the darkness. He tells her to hold her own when speaking to the detectives, and to remember that she did nothing wrong. On Sunday morning, Star and her parents visit Mrs. Rosalie, Khalil's grandmother, who also helped care for Lisa when she got pregnant with Star. Star is flooded with memories of Khalil upon entering Mrs. Rosalie's house, and reminisces about all the games they played together as children. Tammy, Khalil's well-to-do aunt, is at the house as well. She and Lisa were very close when Star was little, and Khalil used to say he wished Tammy were his mother instead of Brenda. Tammy says they do not know where Brenda is, and hopes Khalil's death will finally force Brenda to stop taking drugs. Mrs. Rosalie tells Star that she was the best friend Khalil ever had, which makes Star feel at once heartbroken and guilty for having lost touch with so much of Garden Heights. Mrs. Rosalie confirms that Khalil was selling drugs, but also says he wanted to talk to Maverick about how to get out of the game. Star worries that the public will only see Khalil as a drug dealer, even though he was so much more than that. He looks around at Khalil's family and notes that Regardless of what he did, he mattered to them. Maverick and Lisa then give Mrs. Rosalie money to pay for Khalil's funeral. In Chapter 5, Lisa drives Star and Sakani. Sakani is Star's youngest brother, to Williamson Prep, passing by Carlos's gated neighborhood on the way. Star wonders if the gate is trying to keep people out or in. Upon arriving at school, Star flips the switch in her brain to become Williamson Star, the persona she inhabits to fit in with the posh, predominantly white world of Williamson. She avoids slang and stank eyes and holds her tongue so that she won't seem like a stereotypic angry black girl. Above all, she does not want anyone to think she is ghetto. Star greets her friend Maya, an Asian American student at Williamson, whose boyfriend Ryan is the only other black student in their grade. Star says that the other students assume she and Ryan would date because they are both black. They find Haley, Star's oldest friend at Williamson, and other members of the basketball team. Before first period, Star runs into Chris, whom she has been ignoring since he took out a condom while they were in his bedroom, despite her telling him she was not ready to have sex. Star misses him, however, she finds herself unable to stay angry when Chris goofily raps the introduction to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Star feels like she can be herself with Chris rather than Williamson Star. When Chris grabs her hand over, she flashes back to Khalil's shooting. Unable to separate Chris's whiteness from 115's, she recoils. Though it feels like a betrayal, Star is relieved that no one at school mentions Khalil. At the end of the day, she finds Seven with his girlfriend Layla, another black student at Williamson who is smart enough for Harvard but Howard bound. Seven drives Star and Sakani to the clinic where Lisa works. On the way, a police car pulls beside them at a stoplight. Tension fills the car. Seven immediately turns his music down and stares straight ahead while Star prays for the light to change. When it does, Seven lets the cop pass, but his shoulders remain tense until they reach the freeway. The children arrive at the clinic and greet Lisa. Soon an anguished Brenda arrives, looking completely disheveled, with dirty clothes and uncombed hair. She's beside herself over Khalil's death, but Star judges her in her grief, pointing out that she was not there for her son in his time of need. And then Chapter 6, this chapter just covers the family continues to be a major source of comfort and strength for Star. Carlos reiterates the power of language and the fight for racial justice. Silence will only serve those in power who want to maintain the status quo. Star code switches once again upon talking to the detectives, knowing all too well that she'll be taken more seriously if she acts in a more white manner. She's asked if Khalil seemed irate after being pulled over by 115, and assert that he was hesitant to get out of the car. Star gets nervous and recalls her father's advice to never let them put words in her mouth, and counters the detective's assertions that Khalil was being difficult. The detectives continue to present Khalil as resistant to arrest in their questioning, and also ask Star whether he was drinking, sold drugs, or was in a gang. Star can no longer hold her tongue and quips that Khalil didn't pull the trigger on himself. Lisa asks why it seems like they're putting Star and Khalil on trial instead of 115. They leave the interview with the shared knowledge that this is going to be some BS. The fact that Gomez is a woman of color underscores that anyone can fall victim to racist thinking, and that police brutality is generally a systemic rather than individual issue. In attempting to paint Khalil as having provoked his own death, the detectives are prioritizing 115's well-being and remaining more loyal to the police than to the search for justice, despite Khalil's obvious innocence. Star and Lisa recognize that the world would do anything to make a black boy appear guilty of his own murder. What are the main ideas? I'm going to have to start another video, so we will do the main ideas in that one.